Hey, good morning. How's everyone doing? Thank you so much for choosing this session. I know it's early in the morning. This is probably the furthest I've walked the whole week, so thank you for finding this room and joining us. My name's Chris Bortlick. I'm a principal architect at the Microsoft Technology Center in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm joined by Manfred.
Hi, good morning. My name is Manfred. I'm from Vienna, Austria. I hope you have been there. Amazing city. I cannot see how many people are there, but I assume some of you know it. It says collaboration expert. So what does it mean? I am working for a bank, a big bank, Raiffeisen Bank International, since 2016 in the cloud basis, and I did everything. And at the end, they give me the title collaboration expert. But now I'm focusing on innovation and governance topics, and this is the part I want to share today.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for traveling all this way to be here and share your story. So we're going to talk about real-world lessons for managing Copilot for Microsoft 365. Light is super bright here, so I'll ask a question, and I can't promise I can see most of you. But out of curiosity, maybe by sound of applause, since it's early, how many of you are actually using Copilot for Microsoft 365 in your organizations today? All right. Awesome. So based on the sound, I'll go with maybe half of the room. So we're not going to focus on the end user experience today. We're going to focus more around the technical experience, around security, compliance, administration, governance. We do have some screenshots. We found that it's easier where the sessions aren't widely available to go back and look at things after. We do have a live demo environment as well that I've been managing for the past year for the 40 technology centers globally. So we can pop into that. But we really want to share some of the experience that I've been having with customers over the past year, and then certainly have Manfred share his experience as well. So we're going to talk a bit about just the concepts around the logical architecture for Copilot for M365. We're going to talk about some of the lessons learned and what I've been phrasing leading practices, because I don't like the word best practice, because that to me thinks there's only one or two ways of doing things. But what are some of the trends that we're seeing? In my role at the Technology Center in Boston, Massachusetts, I work with some of the largest global customers, some of which have people in Europe, as well as throughout the United States and other countries and continents. And I deal with customers across all industries. So financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, different industries, education, government contractors, and all that. So I'm going to share some examples of that. And then really excited to have Manfred join talking about his specific example within RBI. And we'll save some time on the back end for additional questions and answers that you folks might have. Sound good? All right. So I know you folks saw this slide probably already 10 times in the first 3 or 4 sessions of the week. But as folks know, I think by now, Copilot from Microsoft 365 brings together large language models with the Microsoft Graph, which is the data that you've been trusting us with for at least the 10 years or so that I've been working with what was BPOS and now Office 365, which is the understanding and the relationships between users and content and conversations and things like that, all being security trimmed as you would expect, but then integrated with the Microsoft applications that end users typically know: Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, and then optionally has the ability to bring in what we call the web plugin to enable Copilot to reach out, not just with what the large language models were trained on years ago, not just what's inside of your company in the Microsoft Graph, but also the web. And we'll talk a little bit about extensibility patterns, not going super deep, but talking about how you can extend the Microsoft Graph with graph connectors as well as plugins. And what does that mean from an organizational security, compliance, and governance perspective? So I'm going to just lean over this for a second. I'm not going to build out the whole slide, but I like to just start with a logical flow, because this comes up a lot with when a user puts in an utterance. I don't like to use the word prompt, because if folks have been doing prompt engineering for a while, there's a lot of parts to the prompt, but I put in the phrase of a user utterance. So the scenario is that a user might be in Microsoft Teams. They're using the Copilot app inside of Teams. I like to just kind of give a frame of reference, because the flow in the scenario is a bit different based upon the Copilot experience you're working in. So imagine you have an end user, they're in Teams, they're in the Copilot app, they put a chat in. It sends that user prompt, that utterance, into this pretty little Copilot picture, the Copilot ecosystem. It then does some pre-processing grounding. So based on that, if your organization has allowed the web plugin, it could send out a request to Bing, which again, we don't store the prompt or the response that's sent out to the web. If your organization allows for other plugins, so a plugin could be a plugin you get from Microsoft for another Microsoft app. A plugin could be for a third party that your organization allows and approves in the Teams catalog, the App Store. A plugin could be a custom plugin that your company builds or partner builds for you. That could be a side-loaded Teams message extension, or it could be a low-code plugin built with Copilot Studio. Based upon the plugins that are allowed in the organization, based upon the plugin the user selected, we're going to go into and looking at the Microsoft Graph, which says in the context of Chris asked a question, what does Chris have access to in the Microsoft Graph? What emails, what files, what messages, what sites does he have access to? And what do we think is relevant based upon the context of the question that was being asked? We then take that and we build a modified prompt that it basically builds a meta prompt that gives some context around who is the person, where are they coming from, what application are they in, that gives context to us. We then take that in and we run that inside of the Azure OpenAI service. So a big thing I point out is, yes, we have a huge partnership with OpenAI, the company. We've made a significant investment with them. They run exclusively in Microsoft Azure, but OpenAI does not get access to the user's prompt. We do not give your data to OpenAI to train the models. We do not store that information inside of Azure OpenAI. So folks have built applications on Azure OpenAI within Platform as a Service. You know there are certain knobs and switches that you can configure based upon your application. We do not let you modify them because just like other parts of Office 365, this is software as a service, and there's certain things that we're doing. One of those things is the responsible AI checks. So responsible AI looks at what was being put in and was it something that's appropriate? Are they trying to generate offensive or threatening imagery or content? Are they trying to do something where they're trying to jailbreak, the models and get into it? We then take that and we go through that and we then pass it into the Azure OpenAI service, which again, Microsoft manages. Within there, again, we've opted out of storing the prompt and the responses inside of Azure OpenAI. So it's a stateless call into Azure OpenAI that has the context and the request. We then run that back through the responsible AI checks on the way out, which again, make sure that the content that was generated is not offensive, threatening, inappropriate, violates copyright agreements and things like that. We then take that response back from the large language model and we do additional post-processing that will look at things inside of Microsoft Purview around compliance capabilities, thinking about things like labeling as an example. If we've labeled documents, and the document was labeled as confidential or highly confidential, showing the user that this document that was coming back in the response, you have access to it, but know that the response that was generated was based upon content that might have been labeled as highly confidential. So just as if you were looking at that as a human in a document, to treat that response with the appropriate sensitivity. And if we're actually generating a new document inside of Word as an example or PowerPoint, we can actually set the document sensitivity label to default to the highest level of sensitivity based upon the content that was leveraging. So we do the post-processing, and then based on that, after that, we then respond back to the end user and we format the appropriate prompt and the appropriate response back to the end user that brings in the content from the graph, the content from the large language model. And if you had allowed for plugins to be used, we bring back the response with the plugins. Just wanted to kind of just frame that because I know some of you are a bit earlier in the journey and some of you maybe have been doing this for a bit and we're a bit mystified a bit on going beyond the video that was shown yesterday, a little bit deeper around the logical architecture for what Copilot does with those prompts. Now, how many of you today are leveraging Microsoft Graph connectors? Again, I can't see you, so you have to clap or cheer for me. Couple of you? All right. So thank you. It's just a good way for me to feel a little energy as well, so I'll use the lights as an excuse. But the Microsoft Graph is something, as I mentioned, we've had for a number of years that have been powering experiences like Microsoft Search, things like the Office Graph formerly, and Microsoft Delve. So the Microsoft Graph has for years had the ability to leverage graph connectors. Graph connectors enables us to reach out to other content sources outside of Microsoft 365. So we have a number of connectors that Microsoft has built that are publicly available for services like ServiceNow, Salesforce, Confluence, and other applications. There's a catalog of partners that have built connectors for the Microsoft Graph. And if you're so adventurous, there are APIs and you could build your own custom connectors. And these connectors enable us to get information into the Microsoft Graph. Based on what the connector provides, we can do things like security trimming. We can go ahead and make sure that we're not only opening up and authenticating against the content source, but actually knowing how to crack open any documents and content and index the metadata about it and bring in the information into the graph. So Copilot really is another service that builds upon the Microsoft Graph infrastructure we've been building for the last number of years. That today you see inside of things like Bing.com if you log in, inside of Microsoft 365 if you're searching at that top level search bar. You're seeing it inside of things like Microsoft Viva if you've used Viva Learning to bring in content and courses from third-party learning management systems as well. And then again, Copilot is another application that sits on top of the Microsoft Graph. The key thing again is that if the user has the ability to search and discover the content through the Microsoft Graph, through things like search, Copilot has the ability to reason over the content on behalf of the user. So everything is being done in the context of the logged in user. Another important thing that, as Manfred and I were talking, knowing that this is a global audience as well, there is the ability for us to think about things around multi-geo. So how many of you, again, just by applause, are leveraging multi-geo today in Microsoft 365? Okay, a few of you. All right, so those of you that are not leveraging multi-geo today, when you provision Microsoft 365, your tenant gets provisioned inside of a geographic boundary, inside of a region. So I'm based in the Boston area, so mine would be inside of the North American region, which means that the data is being set up from a high availability, disaster recovery across multiple data centers within a given region. Multi-geo enables us to get additional data locations. We call them a preferred data location that enables us to say, maybe I'm a company where my primary users are inside of North America, but I have people that are inside of UK, people that are in Germany, people that are in Australia, and we want to have the ability to say their mailbox, their OneDrive has a preferred data location where the data residency, where the data lives, is where that user is, because we want to make sure from a data residency perspective, we're keeping the content there. Again, Copilot is built on top of the infrastructure we've been building for many years in Microsoft 365, inclusive of what we're doing with the customer tenant boundary, which is that multi-tenant environment that we've been running in for many years. And then what's called the Microsoft 365 service boundary. So for years, we've had cognitive services that M365 has built upon, such as the ability to do speech to text, the ability to do language translation, the ability to do optical character recognition or OCR, where these are Azure cognitive services that run inside of this service boundary. Azure OpenAI acts like another Azure service that Copilot is a consumer of. But the big thing is that your user data, when a user puts in a prompt and utterance, we do have the ability to store that from a chat perspective, but that's stored inside of your tenant boundary. So that user's prompt, when they're inside of M365 chat, and that response lives inside of the user's mailbox, which means it's treated like other Teams chats. We can define retention policies. We can go ahead and do a discovery against that. And again, that information is attached to the user residing inside of their mailbox. And if their user's mailbox happens to be in another region, that's where that chat is going to be stored and preserved, building upon the similar infrastructure of how we've been doing Exchange Online and Teams chats. Another big thing is I mentioned that the Microsoft 365 content, the data remains in the Microsoft cloud. The data itself gets written back to that user's preferred region. So in the region, the case where a person might be in another geography, when they generate the document in Word, as an example, it's going to save the Word document wherever they choose to save the document. So if they save it in their OneDrive for Business, it's going to get stored in their preferred data location. If they happen to save that inside of a SharePoint site or a Microsoft team, it's based upon where that site was provisioned, based upon who created the site and what their preferred data location was. Another important thing was that, when we think about things, there's certainly not just the data when it's at rest, but also while the data is being handled and processed. And this is an important thing based on feedback from customers like Manfred and other, to make sure that when data was being processed, not just at rest, but also while it's being processed in memory, that for European Union customers, that is staying, that traffic is being stayed within inside of the European Union data boundary. And that's very important because of just the data handling and the data processing, as well as we had to make sure that as we were building the service out over the last year plus, we had enough capacity to serve those regions so we could keep that within inside of that region as well. So this is something, and we take very, very serious around the security, compliance, privacy, and trust that our customers are placing with us inside of Microsoft 365, and Copilot extends on top of that. So let's talk about a few of the common questions and scenarios that I've been getting from customers over the last year or so. Again, I mentioned I've been in the Technology Center. I've been at Microsoft 16 years, about 8 years at the Technology Center, 8 years prior to that working with folks in the field in different roles and capacities. And there's been a number of common questions that customers have asked about. These slides are, by the way, already uploaded into Whova. So if you want to download them, certainly take pictures if you want, but they're uploaded as well, and you can grab them after. So the first question that comes up a lot is, what version of the Office clients do we need to be on for people to access Copilot in Word or Excel or PowerPoint? The big thing is that certainly they can leverage Copilot in the web clients, Edge, Firefox, Chrome, Safari. I bet you've been here too long. Edge, Firefox, Chrome, Safari. Certainly browser clients are there, the mobile clients, but the Office clients on Windows in particular need to be either the monthly channel or the current channel. So if you're on semi-annual channel, if you're on kind of the long-term servicing, Copilot clients do not work inside of those versions. Now, this initially was the current channel only, and then based on feedback, we extended it to the monthly channel. But we need to make sure that there's some currency and consistency between all of the innovation happening on the back end and the client-side capabilities that are there. So this is the first thing. One thing that has come up that we've gotten feedback on has been the Outlook client. So certainly the Outlook client started off with the browser client. There was a new Outlook client we've been rolling out for a while. We sometimes call the Monarch client. And the goal is to have consistency around the Outlook client across different platforms. We got some feedback that not every customer was ready for the new Outlook client. Some of the features that they relied upon weren't there yet. So we have started to add many of the Outlook Copilot capabilities into the classic Outlook client. So things like drafting a message in Copilot, things like summarizing a message in Outlook, things like using coaching in Outlook are available now, not just in the new Outlook client, but also inside of the classic Outlook client that's available in the current channel and monthly channel as well. The second question I get a lot is, we're concerned about our content. We're concerned that people might have overshared or over-permissioned things. So the answer that I usually give to the question is, well, how do you do it today? How have you done it with Microsoft Search? How have you done it with Microsoft Delve? And if your answer is security by obscurity, I'll give you a hint that that's not a good answer. If it's buried on a site somewhere and it's 5 folders deep and no one's going to know to look for it. The difference between the way we've done the typical Microsoft search, which is that lexical search where people are using keywords and Boolean operators and putting things in quotes, we build the semantic index for you. So part of what we do in Microsoft 365 is we build the relationships between the different entities. And then that semantic index resides inside of your tenant in your tenant boundary. But the semantic index gives us the ability to ask questions in natural language. So the example I give often is maybe I'm working with something and I have a question related to work we might be doing with Tesla as an example. And Tesla is a form of electric car. Tesla also is an engineer, Nikola Tesla, who we have a conference room named for back at our conference center in Burlington, Massachusetts. So depending on the context of what I meant by Tesla, did I mean things with Nikola Tesla? Did I mean things with Tesla the car? Tesla is a form of electric car. Maybe I'm looking for things with other similar electric car providers. Maybe I'm looking for things with solar and things that have charging stations. So the ability to build that semantic model is very, very powerful. And what that means is that someone might have had access to content for a while that they just might not have known how to search for. So Copilot for M365 does not change the permissions. Right? So if the user can browse to the file today, if they can browse to the site today, if they can search on it, if they can see it through Delve, Copilot for M365 has access to it. But again, in the context of the user, there's not a super user where it's running with some sort of super user, power user account. But if Manfred has access to something that's highly confidential and it's shared with everyone in the organization, or it's on a public site, a public team, Manfred could see something get surfaced to him in Microsoft Search, in Delve, in the related kind of content and recommendations, and it could be included within some of his responses in Copilot. Now, the nice thing with the Copilot, in many cases, it does show you a citation and a reference. So the person can see, well, in this response, it came back and generated a response from 5 different documents. And I can hover over it. And if the content was labeled, Manfred could see, well, this document is labeled as highly confidential, but it still does not remove his ability to access it because he had access to that content anyway. So this is an important thing that I bring up with folks, which gets me to the next bit. So what are you doing today with Teams and SharePoint sites, right? So when you create a Microsoft team, it creates a Microsoft group, which creates a modern SharePoint team site. Those modern sites, those teams, can be labeled as public or private. Now, by public, as we know, it doesn't mean public on the web. It doesn't mean guests are allowed in by default. But public means that anyone within the organization could discover it, could browse to the site, browse the team, view the content. Versus private sites, private teams are restricted to specific people that are either invited in or approved to join that. Similarly, things we're doing around data loss prevention, making sure that content that's being ingested is being blocked if it has credit card numbers, social security numbers, things like that that should not be uploaded into SharePoint or Teams or being sent as messages in exchange online. Information protection and labeling is a very important concept. So having the ability to label not just not just the files, but also labeling the container, the SharePoint site, the team. Based on the label of the team, we could drive a policy that says, if the team is labeled as highly confidential, then the team has to be private. If the team is labeled as highly confidential, maybe we block guest access. Maybe we have a conditional access policy that says to access it, you have to be a trusted user on a trusted network, on a trusted device using multi-factor authentication. So all these information protection labeling things we've been talking about for years, again, accrues to Copilot. The next one is access reviews and access packages. So making sure we're thinking about not just joiners and leavers rather. So new to the company, leaving the company, which most folks have good processes and procedures on, but the movers, people that change roles in the company. Again, I've been here 16 years at Microsoft. I've changed roles a few times. I shouldn't have access necessarily to some of the things that I had access to in my prior role. So imagine someone's in HR and they change roles and they're now in IT. They took a new role as a business analyst or project leader in IT. Should they still have access to those HR sites, those HR documents that they had? They're still part of the company, but they're a mover. So doing things around access reviews and attestations. And then making sure that content in sites are being expired and destroyed at appropriate intervals. So things around retention policies and archive policies. So again, make sure that content is being aged out so that we don't have to worry about having old, stale content that's being included in the Microsoft Graph and inside of Copilot. The next bit is thinking about your strategy around connectors and plugins. So do we allow for connectors for Copilot and M365 Search? Which connectors are allowed? Do we allow for plugins? If so, do we allow for the web plugin to enable users to include searching the web and the graph? So an example I use a lot is maybe I'm looking to plan a trip to visit my new friend Manfred, and I'm going to go over and I'm going to visit him. And there's a business reason because he's a client of mine. So I want to understand what is our travel policy when I'm going to another country. But I also want to get information from the web around things I can do when I'm off on the weekend, certain sites I might want to visit, certain things I want to do, certain flights, recommendations. So I might want to combine stuff that's in the Microsoft Graph or on my HR, my travel policies with information from the web, which includes recommendations around sites and hotels and things like that I may want to visit. And then certainly any custom plugins we build. And then the last thing is around group-based entitlement and management. When we're assigning Copilot licenses, the typical leading practice is doing things through groups. Those groups can be dynamic or assigned. So assigned could be explicit people are put into a group. Dynamic could be based upon their role, their title, some sort of an extension attribute. So we automatically add and remove people from it. But this is a great case where I think I have an example next right here. When I'm creating these groups, this is our demo environment that I help to lead for the 40 technology centers globally. We have around 200 licensed Copilot users that we got enabled about a year ago. We chose to distribute the licenses based upon different personas and roles. So you'll see I have some people that are regional vice presidents, some that are sales personas, some that are technical architects at the technology center, and others that are security and compliance roles. The nice thing with that is we can go ahead and maybe have different people that are in different rings of validation, meaning there's early adopters at certain functions, certain roles are looking at certain things before we enable certain capabilities for other folks. Now, there is the ability, this comes up a lot, there is the ability as you're assigning the licenses for Copilot, like you can do with other parts of Microsoft 365, you could choose to turn off certain capabilities. This is something we don't encourage, but it's something that people have asked for, which is, well, maybe I'm not ready yet for assigning a Copilot license that lets people access things through the Microsoft Graph, or maybe I'm not ready yet for using the connectors or the plugins inside of Copilot. We do give that ability. We don't, as an aside, enable you to say today, I want Copilot in Word, but not Excel. There's not that level of granularity, but we could say we want to use it in Teams. We're not yet ready for it somewhere else. Again, this is something that we don't strongly encourage, but it is something that comes up a lot. So I wanted to share with folks that there is the ability to do that. And again, you can do that based on groups of users and different personas could have different entitlements. Likewise, there is a dedicated administrative center in the M365 Admin Center. So one of the common things that comes up a lot is in Copilot, this came up in a session yesterday, there's a thumbs up and thumbs down, right? It'll say, here's the response from Copilot. It's AI generated. It might make a mistake. And people can be given the option to provide feedback to Microsoft on if it was a good experience or not. And if so, they could be given the choice to not just give their feedback, but potentially send in additional information to Microsoft. And if you do that, you are giving us the right to look at the information you provide to us. Some organizations are fine with that. Many organizations are not, and they want the ability to control it. Maybe only an admin can send that in, and they may want to restrict the user from having the ability to send Microsoft that thumbs up or thumbs down. Similarly, customers may not be ready yet for what we used to call Bing Chat Enterprise or Copilot for the web, where people are logging in to the browser with their Entra ID, their formerly Azure Active Directory identity, to access the web. Security compliance, I'll get into in a second. Do we want to enable the web plugin? This is the switch to say, can a user use the web plugin in M365 chat, whether it's through the Copilot browser experience, whether it's through Bing.com, or whether it's through the experience inside of Teams. Certainly, Copilot for security is another thing we've added recently, more focused around security analysts, and then managing those plugins, which I'll talk about in a second. So when you click into the security compliance blade, shocker, it takes you to Purview. And the pages that it takes you to are the same pages that we've been leveraging for the last few years around data loss prevention policies, sensitivity labels for items, groups, and teams, defining retention policies, including having different retention policies for different things. So a common one I talk with customers about is Copilot in Teams meetings. When someone uses Copilot in a Teams meeting, there are 3 different ways you could do that. One is allow it to be done with the meeting being recorded and transcribed. So if it's recorded, it's the voice, the video, the screen share, and the transcript. The second is transcript only, where it's not recording the video, the screen share, the voice, but it is just keeping the transcript. The meeting recording and the transcript can be governed by different retention policies for how long we keep that. But based on feedback, we added a third option a few weeks ago, which is the ability to do Copilot without transcript. And yes, we build a temporary transcript for a few hours, but once that meeting ends, the ability to use Copilot against that meeting goes away. And that's because some customers said, we want to use Copilot during the meeting. We want to use it to summarize the meeting. But when the meeting is done, we want the transcript to be gone. We are also adding in consent for people joining a meeting, that they can explicitly have to consent to the meeting being recorded, transcribed, or even Copilot without transcription. And if they don't opt in, they can still join the meeting, but it will restrict their ability to speak, to chat, to come on camera, because they have not given us the consent to store and leverage their name, image, and likeness, their voice, their video, their chat. And once they consent, then they have the ability to participate more fully in the meeting. Communications compliance, this is the ability to look for things around offensive language, threatening language, those sorts of capabilities. Auditing, the user interactions with Copilot are stored in the Microsoft 365 Universal Audit Logs, which again can be leveraged inside of the Purview Center, Admin Center, or sent to something like Microsoft Sentinel or another SIM. And then eDiscovery, as I mentioned, can be leveraging eDiscovery against those chats in the user mailbox. Now, how many of you have leveraged the Copilot assessment for Microsoft 365? Thank you. All right. So this is something that is relatively new. And again, this is something I've been talking with a lot of my clients about. So all of the stuff we just talked about and many more are now in this assessment. So this assessment, I have a short link to it later on, but this assessment is something we introduced a few weeks ago. It's self-reported. So it's like when I go to the doctor and they say, are you exercising enough? What's your diet look like? Are you getting enough sleep? I could lie to the doctor, but the scale is going to say something different. My blood pressure, my cholesterol will say something different. I have a doctor's appointment in 2 weeks. I'm a little bit nervous about that. As I ate a chocolate croissant this morning for breakfast, don't judge me. But I can go in and I can answer the questions. It's 26 questions. Takes around 30 minutes to complete based on if you know the answers, if you have to research them. This will then generate an email message back to you, as well as a PDF that's about 8 pages long that goes through some of the recommendations based upon the responses that you gave us. Again, it does not do anything against your tenant. It doesn't require you to have any admin rights. So it's not running some sort of an agent that's scanning your tenant. It is totally self-reported. Now, when you do that, as I mentioned, you get something like this. And for our environment, I'm very proud for our demo environment I manage. We're considered best in class. But we have everything licensed, everything enabled. So we've enabled all of these different things in our environment. Most customers aren't at 100%. There's some recommendations as great as they're doing for areas to continue to improve just based upon where they're at. Now, when you do that, it actually will give you a recommendation. It'll put your environment into one of three buckets. So the typical baseline is doing things around making sure you have audit logging enabled, making sure you're doing things like multi-factor authentication to make sure that we're protecting against bad actors and that the appropriate people have access to M365 and certainly the ability to execute Copilot. The second is doing things like conditional access policies, looking at and starting to apply manual sensitivity labels, certainly to the content itself, the Word docs, the Excel spreadsheets, ideally moving into applying sensitivity labels for SharePoint sites and Teams, applying data loss prevention policies to, again, make sure that content that might have sensitive content is not being overly shared in your SharePoint sites, in your OneDrive, and your Teams, making sure we're managing our endpoints that are there. And then as you get into what we consider best in class, looking at things that are more behavioral, so conditional access based upon identity risk, things like impossible travel scenarios, risky scenarios where they're using a Tor browser to anonymize or doing something that looks anomalous for that user, potentially automatically applying sensitivity labels based upon, well, that looks like a credit card number, that looks like a social security number. We see a certain string compare. We're doing an exact data match that looks like customer information or patient information. We're automatically applying it. We're automatically removing inactive content, not just expiring it and sending people warnings. We're actively doing that. We're doing regular access reviews to remove people from there. We're looking at endpoint data loss prevention to make sure that if content from Copilot is generated and then saved locally, maybe it's saved to OneDrive or they put it in their downloads folder or somewhere else. And then again, we're looking for non-compliant usage. One of the things that we've been working on is something called AI Hub, which is in a preview right now inside of the Purview Compliance Center, to start to look at end user interaction with things like Microsoft 365 Copilot. So as people are using it, are they putting in credit card numbers, social security numbers, PHI, PCI type content into those prompts? And if we're managing those devices, we can look at not just how they're using generative AI from Microsoft, but just like how we can look for other shadow IT, are they using other potentially non-approved, non-sanctioned tools? And again, are they putting sensitive content into those services as well? But we've gotten feedback that may not be enough. And in response to people wanting to just turn off the chat, we announced a few weeks back something that we call SharePoint restricted search. So there's been the ability for a while to go into the SharePoint site collection. Thank you. You can clap. Thank you. Yeah. We've had the ability for a while to go in and say, remove the site collection from the index, right? You can go into the site collection, say, remove this from the index. The downside of that is it's gone from the index, which means the user level search and some of the other things that depend upon SharePoint search are also removed. But this has been a bit of a quick sledgehammer. There's also things around SharePoint Advanced Management. We have a talk on that tomorrow morning where we're doing things around restricted access controls, looking for oversharing of links, again, looking for cases where content is widely overshared. What restricted SharePoint search does, and it was in private preview, it went public preview about a week or so ago, and we're hoping for general availability sometime in the next few weeks, is giving you the ability to say at the very top level, so the top level search experience, so just going to portal@office.com or going into the M365 chat experience, we're only going to allow for up to 100 sites to be included there. It does not remove the sites from the index. So if you're still in the SharePoint site, you can search it. If you have other content that you frequently visit, you have access to. If it's content in your OneDrive, stuff that's been explicitly shared with you, is still there. But it gives us the ability to define an allow list that says, we're not ready yet. We're going to define up to 100 sites, that only these 100 sites or up to 100 sites are allowed for people to search broadly until we have had the time to go ahead and remove things that are overshared, remove things that might be set to public that should have been private, to make sure we have proper data governance and access reviews, that we're doing the proper labeling of content as well. So when you go through the optimization assessment, again, you answer those 26 questions. You might be directed directly to go ahead and say, hey, based on what you've told us right now, we think you're good with not enabling restricted search. If you get a fairly low score, if you just don't feel comfortable yet as you're scanning and assessing the impact, then you certainly could enable restricted search. And then as you go through, depending on your licensing, you might have things from Microsoft or third parties that offer similar kind of compensating controls. Once you feel comfortable, it is not meant to be a long-term state that you're doing restricted search, because restricted search does not just affect M365 Chat and Copilot, it also affects the Microsoft search. And the end user will get a banner that will tell them that you may not be seeing all of your results at the top level because your administrator has not allowed some of the content to be searchable. It phrases it in a little bit more user-friendly, less technical terms than that, but they will see a banner that says that restricted search has been enabled, just so people aren't saying, well, I searched on it before, or, why is Manfred seeing it, but I'm not seeing it, sort of thing. So you do get that warning as well. Plugins. Now again, plugins, we do have the ability to manage not just the web plugin, as I mentioned, but also have the ability to manage custom plugins that you might get from the Teams App Store. There's a Works with Copilot ability to look at that, but also custom plugins that you might build. They could be pro-code plugins through Teams message extensions. They could be low-code plugins that you're building through Copilot Studio. The big thing is that you can choose whether or not plugins are enabled at the tenant level or not. If it is allowed, you can say, is it allowed for everybody? Is it allowed for nobody? Or is it allowed for specific people? Again, our leading practice is don't do it, please, based on names of people. Do it based on a group. It's a little bit more flexible and scalable for all of these things. Based on people that are in a certain group, again, those could be your early adopters. We used to call them dog food at Microsoft, and then drinking our champagne, we call them elite. So our champions program is called elite. People like to be elite. Many humans don't like to eat dog food, so we call it the elite program, which is kind of neat. That's our champion program. And you can see that I've uploaded a plugin for our favorite company, Northwind, that sells different products. And I've said, I'm going to go ahead and I've approved the plugin. I've uploaded it to the Teams App Store as a message extension. I could say that everyone in the company has access to the plugin now. But again, the plugin only shows up for people that are using Copilot. The plugins today only show up inside of the M365 chat experience versus a graph connector is available to anyone that's using search. Plugins are available only to users that are inside of the M365 chat experience. Currently, that's inside of Teams, and will extend out to other areas later. So with that, I'm going to invite Manfred to talk a bit about RBI and their experience. So go ahead, Manfred.
Wow, Chris, well done. Two things I have to remark here. I never have seen such a speaker who can speak so fast. It's unbelievable. For me, it takes a little bit more time because I have to translate with my internal Copilot from German to English. So I apologize for that. And the second part, if this information would be available half a year ago, our life would have been much easier. Okay. So let's start with the journey from RBI. We bought this Copilot, and of course we had to do something. But before we go into this story, I want to frame a little bit what is RBI. It's the Raiffeisen Bank International. That means it is a finance institute with high regulations. I don't want to go all through all these facts. We have 18.6 million customers. We have thousands of awards, which we are very proud of it. And we have about 45,000 employees. And as you see, this company is already an old one. We run the business for 130 years. So this is quite a long time without Copilot. And you see on the right side, what is our market focus? So it's mainly the Central and Eastern Europe. You see here countries as Austria, Czech, Slovakia, Hungary, Serbia, Bosnia, Kosovo, Albania, Romania, Ukraine, still in the war, but it's running properly. And we had also Belarus and Russia, which we already separated due to political reasons. Yeah? But you see here, we have a challenge with language because every country has their own language, their own culture, something like this. So this is the bank. So let's go to the next slide. To frame a little bit about the RBI tenant. The RBI tenant is something which we build up together with Martina Grom, which is sitting in the audience, as I see. So we had good support from her, especially the governance topic is very important. we started to use a tool which is called Delegate 365 because we have about 80 different companies which are all in the same tenant. That means they are all Raiffeisen, but they are somehow independent and they want to collaborate very easily. And if you have a one tenant strategy, this is good. If you have separate tenants, it's more difficult. So you see here on the left side a number of almost 70,000 users. You were wondering, I mentioned we have 45,000 users. Here it says 70,000 users. The reason is because we have also 10,000 guest accounts in there. The shared mailboxes are counted as users. The meeting rooms are counted as users. And this sums up to 70,000, okay? On the right side, you see we have about 5,000 Microsoft Teams in place. And all this content which we have in place is scoped for different local cloud administrators. So we have a small team which is responsible for central administration, but what can be done locally should be done locally. So we have in each country local administrators, and they see only a scope of this whole solution. A few words about our history. You see, we started in 2016. It was the first bank, or one of the first bank, which went to the cloud. At that time, cloud was something very evil, and people thought, how can it be that a bank use a cloud technology for that? Okay, but we did it, and we did the onboarding of all these different countries. Every country was the same story. Every country wanted to have their own tenant because they want to manage everything by themselves, and we convince them every time it's better to be in one tenant. Because we have this tool, we could delegate something. We started also with a cloud-only strategy. So no on-premise combination. Everything what has to do with collaboration has to go to the cloud. At the beginning, we had Office 365 E3 licenses, now Microsoft 365 E5 licenses for all users, because we have a lot of security and compliance regulations, and we need these features to implement them. We are best in class in security and compliance. Martina helped us there. Other companies also helped us there to do a stepwise improvement of this situation. And we migrated tons of on-premise files to the cloud, because for the user, it was much better to find the content. They had mobile access. They have much more possibilities. So this frames a little bit what we are speaking about.
Thank you, Manfred, for sharing. So I mentioned I'm from Boston. Manfred's from Austria. My dad was born in Germany, so I only speak English. So I appreciate anyone that can speak more than one language as fluently as you do. So thank you for doing that.
I could also speak Slovak because I have a Slovak.
Well, now you're showing off. So again, I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. A little bit colder there, so we decided to have a fireside chat. I know it's 90 degrees today. But Manfred, I just wanted to understand a bit more. Artificial intelligence means a lot to different companies and organizations. How does RBI define artificial intelligence?
The definition is not that easy to tell, but the story is that artificial intelligence is in place in RBI since 2019. So they have built already an own department who does researches, who does analysis based on artificial intelligence tools which support them. And they created also last November their own ChatGPT solution. So they called the RBI ChatGPT. And this helped us to adopt it because it was not public available. We could access the content. And there we have now 5,000 daily users who use this one. Copilot was not available then, so now maybe it will change. And then they came up last year in December with an AI strategy, okay? So something which was important for us because it gives some framework for it. And they defined, okay, what is our strategy? Of course, we want to be better than the other ones. So this is basically the strategy, but it has more details, okay? We have 4 parts there. Of course, we want to be better customer focus. We want to optimize our bank products and services so that we can serve customers better. Then the second one is we want to do a lot of optimization, automation, digitalization, especially of these repetitive tasks which AI can do. Third part is every employee, every manager should be more efficient, more productive using AI technology. And the last one is that we want to share our knowledge faster as we do it now. Based on this Copilot, you can get very fast feedback and input what's going on. And then we also shopped last year in September. We shopped the licenses for this early adopter or early access program. So we started in September. We played around a little bit, and then we saw immediately, oop, this is a powerful solution. Take care of it. We have to do something. It's not only that we saw we have to do something in the adoption part, because prompting, it's not that easy. We have also to do something in the governance part. And we also came up now with a new program. It's called the AI Pioneer Program. Basic idea is that at least one AI pioneer should be very skilled and support about 20 employees. So
That's
this
great.
is the basic strategy from RBI, where we're starting off, and Copilot fits very well in this.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and certainly the trend that I've been seeing a lot with customers, especially in regulated industry, especially with folks that are in different geographies, is figuring a way to embrace it. I had a chief digital officer of a large bank in the United States say, "We're going to do this. We need to figure out how to do it in a secure, compliant, governed way, though, so we don't end up in trouble because our employees are using it." And whether it's through sanctioned tools or non-sanctioned tools or work devices or personal. And again, knowing your industry and knowing where you're based in the globe, how have you thought about governance of Copilot at RBI?
So, frankly speaking, it is a long story. If you want to sit down, it will be okay for me because I have to tell there a long story about
Sure,
governance.
absolutely.
Okay. So, governance was always important in a bank. Governance is key for us. As you said, the European Union data boundary is a topic. So we have always to focus, is everything stored and processed locally? This is fine for the Copilot for Microsoft 365, but it is not 100% for the copilot.microsoft.com solution, the Bing Chat Enterprise. So we had there to add additional security measures. If somebody logs in there, the pop-up is coming and telling them, please don't share confidential data there. Yeah. So because some prompts can be still processed somewhere in the
for the Bing, for the web plugin. Yeah.
Other part we did from the beginning together also with Martina is to set up the containers. Okay, we said, okay, how do we want to collaborate? And we said, okay, everybody gets a OneDrive. So if you start to create something, then it is hosted on your OneDrive. So that means only you have access to it. Okay, and we said no external sharing from OneDrive. So this was the basic concept. Second concept was that we said, okay, if you want to collaborate, we have to use Microsoft Teams, workspaces, Teams rooms, and their external collaboration is allowed, but it's clearly defined. This is the container. And then we said, okay, we have SharePoint sites, which we only allow for intranet. So we only use SharePoint communication sites, and we don't allow SharePoint team sites standalone because we cannot manage them properly. And of course, we also have in place the Viva Engage for the larger communities. And we did this in 2016, and it's still valid. And this helps us in our topic of using Copilot, because this container topic was quite important. In the intranet, or in SharePoint sites, communication sites, you have only final high quality content. On the OneDrive, it's your personal content. So this was important. Still at the beginning, we did not have any conditional access in place. Yeah? But we found out very soon that if you work from home, you can download every document. Yeah? And maybe you forget to delete it. And if you go into an internet cafe, you can do this. And who knows if you close the browser properly, who knows, or if you deleted the information. So we entered here the conditional access. That means only managed laptops, only managed devices, only managed smartphones, and only managed tablets are allowed to be used. So this was some pain for some users, but they get used to it, and now it's in place. And at that time, this was 2017, we also found out that there is some good solution available, which was called, or is still called, advanced threat protection, safe documents, safe links. These are solutions which help us to protect that no external malware comes to our tenant. So Microsoft already solved this issue, because it would be a nightmare if you get some Trojan, yeah, and he spies a lot of your content and have access to this content. Then, of course, he could also have access to a lot of sensitive data. Another important point, which we introduced 2017, yeah, it was multi-factor and authentication. Unbelievable that still companies don't use that. So we have this for all users in place.
It's the number one threat vector, right? Is not having to say.
It's also not only the users, it's also for all guest accounts. So no guest account will have access to our tenant without using multi-factor authentication. Because if somebody steals your account, he can easily go into it and look around what content is available and steal it. Okay? So with multi-factor authentication, this is solved with 99% more security. So very important part. And then we saw, okay, there's a lot of guest accounts coming here. We have 10,000 guest accounts in there. Oh, we have somehow to manage them, because at the beginning we did not manage, okay? Yeah. And then we started to do the so-called B2B managed guest accounts. That means we create our guest accounts, okay? They shop it in ServiceNow, and then we create it. And we clearly add to the display name the hint to which client or to which customer does it belong, and the name guest. So it is in the global address list clearly visible every time that this name is there. This is a guest. Okay, if I share something, I know it immediately. I'm sharing here content with guest, for example. So also a very important part. Another topic we then started was the deletion policies, because our GDPR said, okay, we have to get rid of some content. So we added deletion policies for a lot of things, including the Teams, including the chats, including Viva Engage, including Stream, including the mails, but not the documents. Yeah. So this is still something we have to do. But deletion policies help us to clean up our tenant. Okay, great. So this is a very important part, and we are happy that we started with that. Okay. And then 2019 we saw, okay, labeling is something which is important, and we introduced the labeling concept. It's a public, general, confidential, and strictly confidential label. Based on this, every document which was opened or created had to be added this label. And this helps us now very, very much, because we can set up policies based on these labels. What do we want to do with confidential data or strictly confidential data? So this was really very powerful. And then we saw the Power BI. Suddenly it grows and grows, and we said, okay, what does Power BI do? It accesses data. And we have to define some governance there. We build up a center of excellence, exactly defining which gateways, which connectors are allowed to be used, because we want to know which data is accessed with this Power BI. So we did a Power BI governance center of excellence.
No, that's great. And I know we've got 5 minutes left in the session. So maybe we'll close with where you are on the adoption journey and kind of what's next for RBI.
Yeah, okay. But we have still a lot of other things. For example, the access review is also something which is very important. Yeah. So we checked your self-assessment, which you gave us, and we go through it. And now we know we have covered all the all the core requirements, and we are in the middle of the best in class. So this helped us very much, and we were happy that we have already a lot of them in place. So the governance topic is something you have to cover, but of course we have also to cover the adoption topic, and we reused our journey, which we did already before Copilot was in place. So we have an ambassador concept in place in every department. There is one ambassador which is covering all the others, and we have a team which do the change and adoption. And then this team came up with a certain program. What should we do if we start with the Copilot topic? And you see here we run several training sessions because it was not that easy to start the prompting topic. People have to learn it. We try to show them. We set up also an own Teams room, the one which was recommended by Caruana, that we get the news from Microsoft directly in there. We have their walk-in sessions. We have their feedback. If somebody has a question, it is perfect. So we did it here. And important is for us also, we did a recent survey about what is the result now, okay? And we found out last week that people are using the Copilot at least 80-90%, at least weekly. Most of them use it daily, which is a good topic. Of course, they use it mainly for Teams meetings, for Copilot in Teams, for Outlook, for PowerPoint, less for Whiteboard and Copilot and Loop. But the other question was, what are the benefits? What do you have for benefits? And they gave us a feedback, okay, time savings is a benefit. So we asked, how much time do you save? And the feedback was about 1 to 5 hours, said 25% per week they save time. And about 50% says a little bit less than a half an hour or up to an hour. So time saving is quite a good topic, but more interesting was the other part. What benefits do we have from Copilot? And they say, okay, it improves the quality very much. They have less mental effort. They have more, they can complete the task farther. They are faster. They are more productive and more creative. To sum it up, based on this material, now we do the recommendations. What would we suggest? Who should get the Copilot? We have to get the approval from the Change Advisory Board. We have to get the approval from the board. And of course, we will then have to have a decision. But we want to open it to larger audience as soon as we get these approvals and the governance is a little bit more done. Key messages: don't stop the Copilot because your governance is not there. Start it and do the governance in parallel. Okay, that's... Thank you, Manfred, for sharing. I speed up very much.
No, you're great. Thank you. And I know we have 2 minutes left. Now, we do have an hour break in between, but we don't want to assume. We're going to happy to stay on for additional questions. Again, really appreciate you coming all the way over here and sharing your story with us. So these are the 3 resources I mentioned earlier. The first one is the assessment that Manfred and I have been referring to. The second is the main place for Microsoft 365 Copilot technology. And the third is the adoption site that we've been referring to from Caruana. So this is just a screenshot of the second one, which is the be-all, end-all of where I go to direct people with. If we're just getting started with sensitivity labels or data loss prevention or access reviews, depending on what you own from Microsoft or third parties, the solution might be different for you. But this is a great way of thinking about things like zero trust. If someone's working from anywhere, anytime, any device, how do we extend that to Copilot? This is the site that Caruana's team has mentioned, which is great. This is where there's actually a success kit you can download right on the main site. There's a big blue button at the top of the page. It's a zip file, download it. There's 7 different presentations. One's a technical track, one's a business track, one's a persona, one's how to interpret the assessment. There's actually an end-user focused certification now that focuses around prompting and end-user skilling to get ready for it.
Our change and adoption team loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good material what Caruana provided here.
And thank you for coming to the conference, and thank you for choosing us so early in the morning.
Thank you very much.